60 doctors and other medical professionals in 7 states are facing federal charges for illegal opioid sales, accused of writing more than 350,000 prescriptions for 32 million pills. What's wrong with this picture? Let's ask attorney and self-described giant slayer and legal crusader Robert Barnes, who practices civil, criminal, and constitutional law and joins us from Las Vegas. Counselor, welcome.
Glad to be here.
In this week's bust, one doctor is accused of giving out 1,500 fentanyl patches, 300,000 oxycodone pills, 500,000 hydrocodone pills, all opioids, and more than 600,000 benzodiazepine pills used to treat anxiety. All this over the course of just 3 years. Another physician's 30-year-old patient suffered a fatal overdose after being given 800 oxycodone pills in 2 months, after which the doctor told her husband to dispose of all pill bottles before the police arrived. Robert, as the Justice Department task force was arresting doctors and others this week, you tweeted, "Big Pharma remains the biggest drug dealer of them all." Are we fishing for minnows when instead we should be fishing for whales?
Precisely. I mean, if they were serious about going after this endemic, and it's an endemic born of the fact that the United States economic elites have stripped Appalachia, where this is disproportionately happening, of its manufacturing and mining jobs, and the effect is what they've been left with is opiates instead of the American dream. But the people promoting those opiates instead of the American dream is Big Pharma. This is like going after arresting a bunch of street-level drug dealers rather than the actual drug lords and drug cartel heads themselves. Because the drug dealers, in this case, Big Pharma, knows exactly who's selling their drug. They know how much drug is selling. They, better than anybody, would know when there's an anomaly taking place, when somebody's selling more than makes sense, when it's selling something that's disproportionate or disparate. They have no economic interest in actually flagging that because they make more profit the more drugs they get distributed. So if the Department of Justice was serious about doing something about the death overdose epidemic that's occurring throughout Appalachia, from Tennessee up through southern Ohio, then they would be targeting the big drug companies, not focusing on a few minor doctors and pharmacists in small towns.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the geography on that, because we covered a big story on this in West Virginia a while back. And if you look at the map, the 7 states involved here, as you say, Appalachia, do you think Big Pharma is profiling accordingly?
I think that's exactly what's happening. I mean, years ago, John Le Carre wrote a great book called The Constant Gardener about how drug companies were targeting poor areas in Africa for drug experimentation purposes. And it was a thinly disguised documentary disguised as a film and a book. And the same thing has happened in the United States. They've targeted the poorest, most outlier parts of the economy, parts of the country that have been abandoned by the economic elites, that have been decimated in the way that when they used to come in and do a coal mine, they would often decimate large parts of the land to build a coal mine. Well, now economic elites have decimated all of Appalachia's cultural, social, and economic infrastructure and left them desperate, and instead decided to come in and capitalize off of it and profit from it by selling them opiates instead of the American dream. And instead of blaming them, they're blaming some low-level doctors who are still practicing in poor parts of the country for their own derelict behavior, rather than targeting the true criminals, the true culprits, the truly culpable parties, which is Big Pharma.
Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the United States Department of Justice, Brian Benzakowski, says you can rest assured when medical professionals behave like drug dealers, the Department of Justice is going to treat them like drug dealers. Tough talk from Uncle Sam is all well and good, but why count on the government to fix this? We just talked to the lead lawyer in that Monsanto Roundup lawsuit consolidation. Is it feasible for plaintiffs to go after Big Pharma instead of hoping Uncle Sam will?
Precisely. What needs to happen is a big class action against big drug companies that have deliberately targeted underprivileged populations in parts of the country, particularly in the Appalachian part of the country. And I'm from the southern part of that. Back home in Chattanooga, Tennessee is the southern tip of Appalachia. To go after them systematically and systemically, because the only way you're going to stop this abuse from taking place is to target big drug companies. I mean, you have lawyers who are suing gun companies on marginal claims of holding them responsible for what somebody does with their gun. Well, drug companies are truly responsible for what happens with the drug that they profit from, that they promote, that they propagate, that they line the pockets of these medical professionals to sell and to oversell. And they're the ones who should be the target of major civil action and allow the civil jury system to bring real justice to Appalachia.
Well, you're very well versed on this, so I guess I'm asking for an opinion. Why is the opioid epidemic a bigger problem in the USA than it seems to be elsewhere?
I think as a whole, it's because it's undercovered. The people that are, years ago there was, when crack cocaine and heroin was distributed in certain parts of the country, it was often distributed in poor African American areas. Here you have opiates disproportionately targeting the big drug companies, targeting poor white populations in abandoned parts of America. And consequently, this isn't the place where the media lives. This isn't the place where the media has friends or family or grew up. And so consequently, they don't cover the degree to which, you have at least over 100 people die a day from opiate overdose, from prescribed opiate overdose. That should never happen. One is too many. And so the fact that it's happening and occurring is mostly undercovered in the American media because the American media doesn't live there, doesn't work there, and many of them probably are investors or stockholders in some of these drug companies that are profiting from it.
And they sure are. I appreciate your time and your perspective on this. Thank you, Attorney Robert Barnes from the Barnes Law Firm, who joined us from Las Vegas.